Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Great to be with you as always. And if you're listening in town, which is an awful lot of you driving around, appreciate that. Be safe today, man. Crazy rain all day. Yeah, that's how old people start shows. There you go. I did it just for you guys. Yeah, man, it's good thing we got the golf in yesterday, Tom. Tom is here. I am here. We are pre-recording today's show. There you go. That's the due diligence that I have to have. Recorded this morning, not this afternoon. Not a lot's changing, guys. Not a lot's changing, and there's reason for it. That said, let's move on. No Platinum Bohica. Yeah, I often say, see Tom shaking the head. I often say, and I think this is true, and I think it's true last night, when you have hopes for an outcome or a result in a game, to me, it's just a lot easier if that result doesn't happen in overwhelming fashion. Like if it's not a buzzer beater in the case of basketball or a Hail Mary in football or some last-second field goal, you can live with that. I hate the ones that are on the razor's edge, the one that, a play here or a play there you're discussing for weeks on end. Well, if we had I think about the Wake Forest game, even though I don't look at that game necessarily the same way a lot of people do. The reality is if we make that pick, Forest State may win that game, and you can look at a play like that and say, oh, man, you got to catch the ball. That really hurts. This was Miami deciding there will be no Platinum Bohica. And not only will there be no Platinum Bohica, we are going to run you out of the gym. And it's disconcerting, Tom. I don't want to extrapolate too much from a singular result, but there is something archaic with the way that Florida State attempts to play defense. And it has plagued them for a long time now. When you have better players, sometimes you can get away with it. But there's just no way that every team we play should have wide open looks from three all the time. All the time. And they all do. And last night's team decided they were going to knock them all down. Now, that's a credit to, in particular, one kid getting really hot. But Miami made a lot of threes as a team.
That's what they do.
And it's exactly what they do. And you know it coming into the game. And so it's not unlike one of the Virginia games where Virginia can shoot threes. The talking points nationally and otherwise come into the game. Listen, you can't leave Virginia open from threes. They like that shot. They'll take that shot. They're coached to take that shot. Like they run their offense for it. Like they play to it. Sometimes it's the result of a long rebound. Sometimes it's the result of great ball movement and a reversal, and somebody gets a good look. Okay, man, it's basketball. The other team's on scholarship too. I get it. But the bottom line is when teams play to shoot the three, it's like a primary goal of their offense. To me, it's a sin to watch a game in which that's not covered at all because the scout tells you can't do that. And last night, obviously, this game was over as it started. It basically I don't know, it was 14-4, I think it was 16-4, something like that. You had little hope that game was going to be good.
Yeah, well, certainly by the time it gets towards halftime, and Miami shoots, I think, 60+% from the field for the first half. Not much worse in the second. There was a greater emphasis as we switched from the junkyard dog days to the second iteration of success with this basketball program of modernizing the offensive approach and prioritizing more efficient shots. And you could see that even though the offense had its ups and its downs, there was a greater emphasis on efficiency. We had a better caliber of player to go along with that. That always helps. But you could see that there was a modernizing of the approach versus, say, 2011, 12, and 13, those particular seasons. And I think it's fair to say, is it time to modernize on defense? Because when you don't have 10 awesome players or 7 really good guys and 3 rotational pieces that you can trust for stretches of time, and you're also missing some key components of 1 through 5, because as much as we like to say basketball is positionless, well, that's not true if you can't switch 1 through 5. You've got to find a way to work around the philosophy when you don't have the personnel that you're used to having, and there's a lot of easy baskets. That's part of it. I said, I think it was on Monday, that if this season's going to get squirrely in the good way, you're going to have to win both of these games this week against ranked Miami and then Clemson coming to town on Saturday. Within 5 minutes of basketball last night, you could realize that this is not going in that direction. Miami's really good this year. That's independently true. They got hot, played above their heads, even though they're offensively gifted. But still, this is a bit of a mess. I still think, for all the hand wringing that annually occurs on the message boards, I still think you get a couple of pieces back next year, you could have a good run at the tournament next year. But this is going to be a lost cause of a season, and I think last night was the stamp on that.
Yeah, well, that was the end of it, right? To me, that was probably the end of it. But this is more of an existential crisis for the program. This is what we're getting into now, as opposed to individual results, because I don't know that it's going to get turned around. I'm really hoping it does, and we're having honest dialogue. It pains me to second guess Leonard Hamilton, who has proven himself to be able to come and rise from the ashes on numerous occasions when people, myself included, thought this is not going to get turned around. You just alluded to that other metamorphosis where we switched and changed into how we played during a stretch of incredible basketball, but getting there was very difficult. And we went from having a real identity to being identityless and wondering, what was going to happen. Well, what was going to happen was Florida State was going to put together a team that, had the pandemic not happened, had a chance to win the national championship. Yeah. Florida State put together a team that ended up being one of the preeminent programs of the ACC, and that's in a conference that has two really well-funded, well-supported, and tradition-laden programs like North Carolina and Duke, amongst others. So Florida State didn't have to take a back seat to those teams. And I never will look at that accomplishment as anything other than a spectacular moment and a wonderful career for Leonard Hamilton, because that is something I don't know that we'll see around here again. I don't take that for granted. That was insane. Florida State, as a university, has never put an emphasis on its basketball program. So to have done those things without those investments is truly remarkable. And so I don't say it, willy-nilly when I talk about concern and issues with what we're doing strategically or problems I see perhaps within the makeup of the team. I don't take it lightly and say, well, hey, listen, we got to move on. Well, I'm not so quick to say that about a guy who accomplished all those things. But what I don't like, Tom, about a game like last night, and again, not trying to overreact to a singular awful, awful, awful performance. And yes, I would have liked to have seen the Platinum Bohica happen. But hey, I mean, it's, tongue in cheek to some extent. 9 straight wins is an amazing accomplishment over anybody. But they didn't rebound the basketball at all. Obviously, Leonard Hamilton saying, I've never seen a half where a team didn't get an offensive rebound. I don't know if I've ever been a part of that. Then he went on to mention that, Miami came in as the much more focused, hungry team.
Yeah.
Well, why?
Yeah, no.
What is that?
I agree. We're coming down the stretch run here, and again, as we like to say, multiple things can be true. If you had the pieces that you had put together for this season from the jump, this would be a slightly above 500 team in my mind. Might be a game or two over 500 in the ACC. Right now, you'd have to be 2 at 5-5. But I think that's where this group would be, and you'd be on the bubble and in the upper half of the ACC. So the sky, in one sense, is not falling. On the other hand, last year was a disgrace compared to the standard that you had built in Hamilton 2.0 existence. You had guys quit in multiple games, and you see lapses like that again with this group. And that sounds like what Coach is alluding to last night is a lapse in focus or a lapse in effort, which is unacceptable. So on that hand, that's a real problem and a downward trending arrow for the program. We're in the stretch run for Coach Ham's career. It has been one of my favorites across all of the sports. And for me, it was the first sport I fell in love with when I got here on campus in 2006. which remarkably is closing in on 20 years ago. And he was the head coach at that point. It's just amazing how much time has gone by. I think they've got another decent to good season left in them, at least next year, if not the one after that. But two things are competing here. The program is downward trending, but this also is an absolute disaster when you talk about the circumstances of how they've arrived at the record they're at. And even with all that said, they're a 500 team in the ACC. So that there's just a whole lot to juggle there. I think the change will happen in, a couple of years' time, but I don't think this is going to be something where Coach Ham hangs it up after this season. I think he wants to make it right.
Well, I don't want him to hang it up after this season. I'm not calling for that. I don't want anybody to think that. I am calling this season what it is, which is a disaster. Quote, I am hopeful that tonight's beatdown will get us more ready and more determined and prepared mentally to play against Clemson, said Leonard Hamilton. I'm sure our guys, when they watch the film, are going to feel the same way I felt. So he's talking about a lack of effort. He's talking about a lack of focus, and it's against the Miami Hurricanes at home. Fresh off of probably your best performance of the season at Pitt, where you went up there and led that game. Obviously, you started out slow up there, but you were so locked in, so focused, so mentally tough that you went on an insane 22-6, 32-14 run or whatever it was, 32-9. I mean, it was insane. They were able to do those things because they were tough and because they have some ability. And then when you squandered the lead in the second half, just like you did against Florida, You didn't lie down. You rallied back on the road. That's a good Pitt team. It was the first win you had over a team with a winning record. So you showed something there. I don't understand how that's followed up with this. I don't. Now, it's not one of those. It's not rhetorical. I do not understand it. So what happened in the locker room? What happened in preparation? What happened in the week or the days leading up to the game? I don't know the answer to that because I'm not in that locker room. But obviously Leonard doesn't like what happened because, Leonard's very careful about what he says and how he says it. More than one quote from last night's game suggests he was dismayed by the lack of focus and effort. He's acknowledging that is embarrassing. Yeah. He doesn't usually do that. He doesn't usually give in to the consensus of the fan base or the consensus of the criticism. He'll usually, because he's got his finger on the pulse. So a lot of times he'll know, in the back of his mind, they don't know that so-and-so didn't practice all week. They don't know that, so-and-so, one of our top defenders, has a lingering groin injury and really couldn't cover the point, and that left everything open for everybody else. He's always kind of got an answer behind the scenes. I know one of the things I've always liked about Leonard is if you go over there and you talk to him, even like during the season, if he trusts you, he'll tell you, hey, listen, just so you know, one of the reasons we're struggling with this is so-and-so's hurt. And then you're like, oh, okay. So I always give the benefit of the doubt because of that. But when I hear those quotes, I hear a man who's also looking at his players going, yeah, man, that ain't it. And I want to know why that is.
Well, I mean, it starts with leadership on the court, and they didn't exhibit it last season. And when you parse that quote from last night, combine it with some of the things you saw from last year, I don't think that they have the structure and the culture that they had, entering COVID. That's just period. And does that fall on the head coach to a degree? Absolutely, it does. I think circumstantially, though, this season is worse off than it would have been. Perhaps there would have been those issues in the locker room anyway, but the record wouldn't be as stark for us to talk about this in such a critical way. Again, this is a group that last year I thought was soft at multiple points. And I think their head coach just called him that maybe a little bit last night. De Niro, a little bit. Just a little bit. But I read Michael Alford's quote on Warchant.com when Ira did the one-on-one with him. That ran, I think, a few weeks ago on the site, early January, when he said, we're having a hard knocks season, which is, that's about right. It's a tough year, but the program is in good hands. And Director Alford didn't speak about it in a way that John Thrasher did roughly 8 years ago when they extended Leonard Hamilton for 1 year. And the quote was essentially, if you parse through it in a PR sense, this is your last stand, coach. Yeah. We hope that you turn it around. We have faith in you, but this is it. I didn't get that sense from Michael Alford, so I don't think a change is coming. I just hope for better results next year. And if you've got to rid the program of some guys in order to maybe take a half step back in order to take a big step forward by the end of next season, then you got to do so. Got to do it.
Yeah, and again, it's funny because I do think that we're reacting to some degree the way it's very modern. It's very internet age. It's very first takey. I don't mean you and I specifically. What I'm saying is that in the era of everything has to be figured out, summarized, neatly packaged, and presented every week, regardless of there's another game, it's a 5-year deal, whatever it might be. Like, this is how people's careers have to be summarized. Their legacies have to be summarized. Everything has to be answered for and accounted for and wrapped tightly in a debate. I'm not going there with Leonard Hamilton. That is not my intent. I am pointing out that the program has taken a huge step back in the areas of responsibility that you're talking about. And that is what's most disconcerting, because that is not who he is. That's not the way he's ever coached. That's not the locker room he has been able to produce, right? One of the reasons, I mean, we talk about culture all the time right now with football.
Yep.
Well, culture, the great culture setter of all time has been Leonard Hamilton with that program. I mean, that thing fed into itself. I mean, the players took ownership and passed it on to the next group. We would laud that on a weekly, monthly, yearly basis. It's one of the things that we would sit back in awe of, because he was always unwavering. The tenets of what he did and what he believed, there was no margin. You are going to do this, or this is the result. That's how this is going to work. And so when you see things that suggest that some of the fabric of that has been torn, you have to say it. It doesn't mean, for the listeners, this is not me talking to you, for the listeners and the folks that are debating this is not either one of us or anybody that I think is reasonable at this point saying, well, they should fire him. No. That's not going to happen. You don't fire a guy, not at this point, who has done what he's done as recent as 2 years ago. It's not like this is 10 years of falling off a cliff. This isn't the lost decade. This is a bad couple of seasons. And now I'm not going to sit here and pretend. I'm not Pollyanna. My man is 74 years old. He ain't going to be here that much longer. Got it. But I tend to agree with you that there'll be a better team next year. I just think, as I said 2 years ago, unfortunately, when you begin to lose assistants, especially key assistants to your program, I feared that the ship had sailed for the kinds of seasons we had set up for the pandemic year. And I believe that is 100% still accurate. Unfortunately, I believe that's a true statement. We're not getting back there.
No, but I think if you have another year that's disappointing, it doesn't have to be at this level. It speaks for itself if you have barely a double-digit win season, next year. Then it's over. That's it, and we're moving on. And it's a golden watch, and it's a handshake. It's not, it wouldn't be a firing press release. It would be a celebration press conference and a ride off into the sunset. But if it is a disappointing year again next year, I think it's time. I think it's fair to say that it's time for the athletic department to take action and to move on. I'm not there yet. I've got one more year left in me personally. But here's the thing: we called it out last year when we saw it for the first time, which is, this is not the standard. This is not the effort level that we have come to know, respect, and cherish about this basketball program. We saw it initially. Perhaps it's continuing a little bit. And it speaks for itself. And it speaks for itself to a place where we don't want to speak about basketball as much as we usually do. And that sucks.
It's awful. It's awful because you can only talk about Junior Day so often. But I will talk football in a moment. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Hey, no fans, our partner ISF Inc. is a national management and IT consulting firm. What's up, guys? Our next partner that you're going to hear from is Athletic Greens. You've heard me talk about Athletic Greens in the past. Happy to talk about them again. I take Athletic Greens every day, and I gave them a try because certainly I wanted more energy, sustained energy. I wanted to support my immune system. I don't like taking pills and vitamins per se, and I wanted something that tasted good too. And the first time I tried it, I was very surprised. It had an appreciable effect on my energy levels. And also, over time, you'll note that it helps your skin, your hair, your nails. I don't have a lot of hair, but if I did, I bet I could feel that. I bet I could tell. It's a comprehensive health habit, and it is a powerful one at that. AG1 is great for recovery. That's Athletic Greens. And I take mine basically when I wake up every morning. I don't have to worry about it because you get all the nutrients that you want. It's the best way to ensure that you're going to get all of your vitamins. It's a carbon neutral business, by the way, if that's important to you. It is to a lot of people, and that's good to know as well. I would also note that it is a comprehensive solution to what you need from a supplement routine. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs right now with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/JCS. Helps me out, guys, if you use that. Not financially, but it lets them know that you heard this ad on my show. And I do take it, and I am vouching for them because I enjoy their product. It's athleticgreens.com/JCS. Check it out. I think you'll note the difference in your life with a simple drink each and every morning to start your day. athleticgreens.com/JCS.
Is the perfect season to finally buy what you've been wishing for. Pinch a Penny Pool, Patio, and Spas has the hot tubs you need for the price you want. Come shop our huge 12,000 square foot showroom and save today. There's over 50 hot tubs in stock right now, so you won't have to wait weeks on end for that delivery to finally come to town. If you're ready to relax, we're here to show you how. Pinch a Penny Pool, Patios, and Spas. Come visit our huge showroom at 2473 Greer Road with over 50 hot tubs to choose from. You'll be glad you did.
Over 50 years ago, when Paul Nicholson founded Paul's Termite and Pest Control, he had one goal in mind: provide the best service possible to his neighbors so they felt like family. Your problem was his problem, so today it's our problem. Paul's service area is our home. It's where our kids go to school, where we shop, and where we get involved with community organizations. So if some out-of-town company knocks on your door and begins pressuring you to sign an agreement for termite or pest control, you can bet on a few things. Number one, you'll never see that person again. Number two, your technician is likely to change often. And number three, your money will not stay in North Florida. These companies are sending your money to home offices in Atlanta, Orlando, Salt Lake City, or even Great Britain. Paul's Termite and Pest Control knows local means something to you. The health of your Tallahassee home, family, and pets is our number one priority. For the elimination of termites and pests and a greener lawn too, call your local company with local solutions. Paul's Termite and Pest Control.
We all want more energy, more strength, more results. Well, welcome to Orange Theory Fitness as you take a step towards feeling more alive today. Backed by science, Orange Theory's heart rate monitored workout is scientifically designed to keep heart rates in a target zone, spiking metabolism and increasing energy. Orange Theory Fitness is a one-of-a-kind group personal training workout resulting in more energy, visible toning, and extra calorie burn for up to 36 hours. Experience a more vibrant life today with Orange Theory Fitness. To find out more, go to orangetheoryfitness.com.
The Jeff Cameron Show, brought to you by Orange Theory Fitness. 2 Tallahassee locations, Midtown on Thomasville Road and Northside in the Village Common Shopping Center. Online at orangetheoryfitness.com.
So Tom Lang and Ira Schafel joined one another gleefully for the Smash on Monday. I'm sure that you guys tuned in, but for those that missed it, at one point, there was a conversation about the secondary. And I've not told Tom this yet, but I thought I would share with the entirety of the offense that it made me smile. It gave me pause to think it's not as bad as I thought it was. Now, that sounds rather desperate because the bottom line is Florida State's going to be a good football team next year, and we know that, and we're going to analyze it backwards and forwards because that's what you do when you're excited about your football program. There is no offseason, as people like to point out. And I just like a lot of primers for the spring football practice that we're going to cover also with glee, because there will be real competition, and I think that competition will be intense. I think there'll be information to be gleaned from our reports there, both video and written, on warchant.com, and it's why you want to sign up for warchant.com right now. Hey, there you go. That's true. You do. But having said all of that, promotions aside, defensive back was an area that I kind of thought, well, I'll volunteer for the videos on the defensive line. I'll volunteer for the I'll volunteer for the videos on the offensive line, perhaps the receiving core. If we want to talk quarterback play or the running back room, I'm here for you guys. What time are we recording? I'll stand down and let somebody else debate the greatness of the secondary because that's the kind of team player I am. But when those two gentlemen talked about it, I thought, that secondary doesn't suck. There's some pieces. It's not terrible. And if you figure that Cypress comes in, Tom, as you guys have talked about, he's proven himself as an elite corner. Now, that gives you the freedom to move things around a little bit. And I would say to you off the air, if Azariah Thomas, and I believe this will happen because I think he's made this way, if he emerges as the other corner, okay, as the guy to start, body type-wise, athletically, he's the best we have. Now, I haven't seen Cypress yet, so we'll see, right? But anyhow, Azariah Thomas is that guy, right? Well, then that means you possibly could move Renardo Green to safety. He's played safety. And on the other side is Cypress at corner. And you now have your real options at safety, and they're pretty good. I mean, they're decent. We'll see. Could become real good. Shaheem Brown's a player I really like. Hakeem Dent has a lot of experience. And so, you put Renardo Green back there who will hit you. He's not afraid and has played the position. Okay, now we're juggling around with some things, and I haven't said anything of the rest of the depth that are all very, for the most part, all very experienced. So when we talk about how good Florida State's going to be, and we will talk about it a lot because expectations, I think, are going to be sky high, maybe even a bit too much. I mean, we did a video this week. Should Florida State be considered a playoff team, a team that should threaten the playoffs? I think the answer is undoubtedly yes. Even if you don't believe they'll go, they got to be considered amongst a handful of teams to make the college football playoff. So it doesn't get much more in terms of anticipation. It doesn't get much more hype around a program than that. Calling them a playoff team means you have to be one of the 4 best teams in the country, right, if you make the playoff, or presumably certainly in the conversation. So, that secondary is not cheeks. It's not cheeks, Tom.
So, there's a lot to unpack with this group because you're right. Cypress coming in as a plug-and-play player, as I almost lost power. Hope we're still here. And then the guy that we don't talk about very much, that we all talked about before last season, was Amarian Cooper. So that's the interesting thing here is I'm not counting on Amarian Cooper to be an answer for you as a starter. What if he was to return to form from the back half of his first season on campus? If he turns into that player, you've got an embarrassment of riches at corner all of a sudden out of nowhere. And the other thing I'd say about this whole conversation about defensive back is something you push for very, very hard. There is now a new person.
Oh, I'm elated.
There is now a new new position coach.
Yes.
Providing insights and schemes and experience. He had his own son ready to go to play from the high school level to the college level at Alabama. You have that particular mind working with a lot of this clay. There is actually a 2 deep now at defensive back. And I know we've fallen into that trap every year, and I lament it every damn year that defensive back is going to be better this year. And it was improved. Jamie Robinson's second half of the season was really good, looked like the season prior. But without Jamie Robinson, that's a lot to account for. And without knowing exactly what Fentrell Cypress is, that's another giant question mark. I think he's a good player. Pro Football Focus says he's a good player, but we'll see how he fits into the scheme.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I think from what we've seen and what we know with the footage and the film and all that, he's a good player. How he works within the scheme is going to be interesting, but you can work with a guy who's made as many plays as he has in big-time college football. We cannot emphasize enough what a huge moment this was for Mike Norvell and staff to make this hire. We've talked some about as you improve, you get access to better players. You also get access to better coaches. And I'm not the guy that comes on the air every day and says, fire this guy and fire that guy because there's a problem. But you guys know halfway through the season, my hands were to the sky. I was done with our secondary coach. And there were a lot of reasons for that. And I will tell you one of them, Tom, had to do with technique. And I know a little something about that position. I never played corner, but when they switched me to safety, I had to learn a lot of things about angles and also how you create what you're after in terms of leverage. And I would watch a lot of undisciplined mistakes and things to do with technique. So when you see technique issues, that's coaching, man. That is all that is. And that's why I kind of threw my hands to the sky and went, all right, well, I see what we got going on here. We're just not going to fix this. We're just going to let this happen every week. That drove me nuts. And I think that will be cleaned up, buddy. I think that's going to be – I think the evidence of who Patrick Surtain is, both as a player and as a coach, and what he's already done, as you correctly noted, with his own son. Now, a lot of that's ability. His son is an elite athlete just like he was. But he still had to teach him, still had to show him, and, showed him to the tune of a first-round pick.
Yeah, well, you got to be more than an elite athlete to play at Alabama, because they could choose of the elite which ones they think are automatic fits and which ones are the most low maintenance. So I like that part of it. But, I mean, you could just go through it very simply and say corners. All right, the corners on this roster. So Cypress is one of them. Azarie, Kevin Knowles, Greedy Vance, Jarion Jones. Reynaldo Green is a Swiss Army knife. But what a stabilizing force he would be. If he's a starter, you're not pissed off if he's one of your starting outside corners because he was a solid player for you throughout the season, the most consistent guy you had. And then at safety, Shaheem Brown, Akeem Dent, and we'll see if, again, Reynaldo Green figures into that rotation. And then maybe you go grab somebody in the portal to round out that quartet with more experience. But they could have a couple of younger guys emerge as well. It's just when you're looking for solutions. Did I mention Amari Cooper again, or did I forget him again? Maybe I did. But maybe he's a guy that could move to safety. Hell, did you know that Travis Jay is only a redshirt junior? He's got 2 more years.
It came up yesterday on Seminole Headlines, and the hopefulness in Ira's voice shocked me. And the reason it shocked me was I had a previous conversation with him at a practice, and he was like, well, unfortunately, that looks like a lost cause. I think I know what it has to do with. First of all, there is all of this athleticism within Travis Jay that we've seen. I mean, he does have that. There were just other things missing. He couldn't make a play on the ball. His confidence was shot because of that one season where he was in position time and time again and did not make plays. But as I say that sentence out loud, he was in position time and time again. You think, oh, okay. So now Patrick Surtain comes in and he sees a Travis Jay. And he goes, whoa, what do we have here? Mm-hmm. This guy's an NFL athlete. Now, he hasn't proven himself to be even a good college football player, but he's an NFL athlete. Maybe I can get something out of this guy.
Well, and the quiet whispers that are growing louder too. And now that practice is over for the season, maybe Travis wasn't available to play this year. Maybe that was an issue. So that also tell you.
But Tom, that would also tell you that there is a want to and a stick-to-itiveness that I'm not sure I would have guessed was there based of previous years' practices. So what I'm saying is that if that kid is the kind of committed that if he weren't eligible, stuck it out, went to practice every day, practice hard, was never a problem, and did whatever else he had to do to remain on the program, on the team, well, that does speak to a dedication and a commitment that is above and beyond a lot of times what we see kids in the same situation. So, hey, man, all I'm saying is he's got a lot of ability. I don't know if we get anything out of Travis Jay, but I'm glad you brought him up because he is still on the roster, and he does have unbelievable athleticism and length. And you got a new coach at the position, and sometimes that's all it takes. They connect, he sees something, and boom.
I just think it's funny that you got 2 more years of him if you need it. It's just with this COVID eligibility, it's nuts. But yeah, he's one of the more positive citizens in practice too, and they don't have a lot of problem children at Norvell's practices, and we've documented that left and right. But Travis Jay is one of the more notable players. You're like, man, he's always got a smile on his face, or he takes to coaching quite well, or he encourages teammates. He's one of those type players. If he emerges on the other side, everybody out there that's watching this or listening on the radio right now, you'll start to read those stories and hear that, that kind of commentary from his teammates. But I can tell you on the ground, just watching it as it's happening, if that story happens, that whole sideline will go nuts for a player like Travis Jay, because he is well liked among the group. The question is, when you're shuffling out the two deep, can he climb up that high? He might be able to. He's got to find one position, lock in, and that's where we're going from here on out. But when Surtain takes a look at this group of defensive backs, how he shuffles it is going to matter. Adam Fuller's got an idea, and his vote is going to be the one that counts the most. But Surtain might see that Reynaldo Green could serve the team better at safety. Or he might say, no, you don't want to move him from corner. Let's get a guy like Greedy Vance back at safety. Who knows? The shuffling is going to happen, but there are a lot of names and potential solutions this year, which is why, to me, and that discussion on the Smash with Ira, the sky is not falling at defensive back. New pair of eyeballs and a lot more able bodies to play the positions.
Yeah, and by the way, just so everybody knows, once a program reaches the status of good and is no longer climbing towards being something that doesn't resemble ass and is now, I guess, saddled is not the right word necessarily. I mean, you can't be afraid of expectations. You got to embrace expectations. You got to be excited about people being excited about you. I mean, it means that you have obviously climbed. That's true in business. That's true in your work, whatever it is, right? If all of a sudden you get more responsibility, you can't be like, oh, no, you've earned that. You've done something great with that. So I'm not saying saddled with expectations, but the way that we cover the team and the way that we talk about the team will change too. Because I always have to remind people when I say, guy's, just a guy, he's not very good. You'll hear me say that. He's not very good. It's in reference to championship standard. It's in reference to where we're trying to go. It's in reference to where I hold the program, which is way up here amongst the best in all the land. And we certainly haven't been that. It's been a long time since we've been that. But you can ratchet it up or down depending on what's realistic with the quality of player that you have. You can know, well, even though the standard may be here, we're still climbing to get to that. This is unrealistic to look at this squad and say that they should be compared to that. Well, guys, we've graduated. They've got good football players over there. They don't have guys that he's getting more out of than he should. They've got very good football players. I mean, as it turns out, Jordan Travis is an elite college quarterback. End of story. He is. If you have an elite college quarterback and you have a good offensive line and you have a loaded running back room and you have a deep receiving core with diversity of skill, and they do, and you're better defensively up front than you were a year ago, and they should be, well, then expectations are for a 10-win program the season before that now has good football players and a better depth of them that you should be making steps towards great. So when we go to practice and we watch spring and we watch fall, it's going to be against the old standard of we're back, baby. Let's talk about these guys as it pertains to, do they meet the greatness standard? And not everybody will. There are holes in the lineup. They aren't Georgia. They're not Alabama. And they're not Ohio State. Very few programs are. But we're knocking on the door. We're knocking on the door. I'm going to be comparing them with how close they are to those programs.
Yeah, and you just go down the line and say one corner is set, you would think, in Cyprus, right? Like he's going to have to be on the field. That's why he's here. So then you have four other players in the defensive back room that need to be on the field because of how base formations are in college. You're not going to run two corners and two safeties. So of Akeem Dent, Kevin Knowles, Jerrion Jones, Reynaldo Green, Omarion Cooper, Travis Jay, A.Z. Thomas, and Greedy Vance, and Shaheem Brown. Can you find four answers there? When I put it to you that way, it sounds very doable. That sounds extremely possible. And that's where the hope is this year. For me, I've talked a lot about how in spring I look forward to, I always do, the trench battles and watching the offensive linemen, the new guys that are here on campus, and some of the younger guys that are developing, like a Julian Armella or Charlton or an Early, go against this defensive front. Going to be a lot of fun, especially with Fisk and Daryl Jackson in the fold now. That's going to be a lot of fun. But 7-on-7s and these skelly drills that they run, where you go, and individual one-on-ones with these receivers and defensive backs,
that'll be good.
That's also going to be incredibly fascinating too. Like when we go to practice 2 years ago, I didn't really care what anybody else was watching in their drills, because there wasn't a whole. I knew the answer, and it wasn't good. Now it's going to be, Jeff, what did you see with your drills? Corey, what did you see? Ira, what did you see?
Yeah, that's true.
I want to know. I gotta know.
It gets me giddy. It's been a long time. I remember when and we got to go to break. I remember I was fortunate breaking into the industry, 98. I mean, think about how good Florida State was and what they were about to be, wire to wire in 99. So when I got to see practice and I would talk to players and we were talking to the best program in college football. Like you just walked over there knowing you were watching the best program in college football. It was just crazy. And to think that we're getting to a place where we can start talking about how close are they to being. They're not there. They're not there, guys. They're not there. But it's just kind of fun to have the how soon.
Quick perspective, just because you said that. The first tour of duty before COVID, I remember thinking, these guys are small. They're going to have to play with a chip on their shoulder to have a fighting chance. And then I remember thinking last year as we were going along through fall camp, because I kept on harping on it. They're better. They keep getting better. Do they matter? And of course everybody matters. But I meant in terms of college football, the hierarchy. Do these guys even matter? And then we get to November and I'm thinking to myself, damn right they matter. People around the country are wondering what's going on in this building for the first time in forever. They're actually curious.
It's awesome. It's a good feeling. It's a lot of fun to cover, and there are a lot.
We understand how important it is to have transportation you can rely on. So no matter what the road ahead brings, we'll be there, offering you and your family the support that's made Farm Bureau Insurance a trusted name for over 70 years. You deserve more. You deserve a promise.
I'm Andy Cohen with Florida Farm Bureau Insurance. Please call me at 850-671-FARM.
My man, Eddie.
Jeff, what's happening, dude?
Bears eating people all over the place. I read another article today. It's the third one in the last month of somebody getting mauled to death by a bear.
Man, bears have their own space. You got to let them have that.
You do. You got to stay clear of bears, is what you're saying.
Yes.
I got a question for you. Here you go. If you had to be mauled to death, eaten alive by any animal in the world, which would you choose to eat you alive?
Ooh, I think maybe I'd want, I don't know, longevity time, a mouse.
Just a slow burn.
Slow burn.
This thing's just finished the pinking. It's been a month.
I could go to work. I could still do my thing. I could probably live 30 years.
I thought you were going to say great white because it'd be quick, or a grizzly. We went with mouse.
Yeah, mouse.
Okay. Mouse it is. Gordo's, bringing the flavor and flair of Cuban food to Tallahassee since 1996.
Hey, Greg Tish here along with
Matty Rowe.
And you can listen to us Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Real Talk 93.3. Matt, we give away a couple things each week.
Just a few.
We got the Florida Farm Bureau Insurance Wheel of Food. We have Give Me a Second, where we play a second of a song, and you guess that song. And we also play FLA or Nay. We have a lot of fun Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on
The Greg Tish Show.
Think that's enough?
We can talk about our feelings.
There's a lot.
The Greg Tish Show, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m., only on Real Talk 93.3. The Jeff Cameron Show, brought to you by Orange Theory Fitness. 2 Tallahassee locations, Midtown on Thomasville Road, and Northside in the Village Common Shopping Center. Online at orangetheoryfitness.com.
So short segment here to round out the hour. And I want to mention this because we know this is a radio show, the Jeff Cameron Show. It's not always all things Florida State all the time. I'm not going to constantly produce caveats, by the way. I'm just going to say what I want to say. But for people that are kind of newer to the program in the last year and a half, we've been able to hyper-focus on Florida State solely for most of the time because really it's been a lot of fun to document all of those things. But with the basketball program being what it is, and we already talked about that for 20 minutes to start the hour, and our anticipation for baseball and these other things, they're all still in place. But we're a day away, Redemption Thursday tomorrow, before I can really get into the football games tomorrow. Something did happen last night that, as a diehard sports fan, interests me. And it interests me because I have said, and you know this, Tom, for the duration of this show, that and certainly since we've been together, that as a diehard sports fan, if you are lucky enough to have watched a career begin and end, and it transcends that of other careers in the history of the game, and you're around for it, and it's documented, and it was during your lifetime, that's the kind of fun stuff that old men, granddads, talk about with their grandkids. I remember my granddad talking to me about the rise of Jack and Arnie. He was a big golf guy, and he got to see in totality golf put on television, Arnold become the king, Jack surpassing Arnold and becoming the greatest player ever. He got to go see him play in person at the Masters. And he would tell me these grandiose stories about how these guys could do magical things, and it was such an honor and a privilege. My father would talk about certain players growing up like Jim Brown. I think your dad talked about Jim Brown too. Like, they got to watch the totality of Jim Brown's career. And I really wish I had seen Jim Brown play, because when I watch him on video highlights, NFL films, he seems so smooth, like it's effortless, like he was a man amongst boys. He was so much bigger and stronger, and he would always fall forward, and then he would get up slowly and walk back, and you'd think he was hurt, but he never wanted to show you if you hurt him or not. He was tough that way, and he was the best running back in football until he wasn't, and Walter Payton came in and others who we did see. So you get my point. There are players like that our parents talked about. We have one in our midst. Go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, my dad's favorite thing to mention about Jim Brown, Jimmy Brown as he calls him, was that he used his arms as weapons as he ran. He's like, I respected that he didn't just try to stiff arm, he would try to beat you. Yeah.
Yes.
The tape bears that out. The tape bears that out. That is true.
And Derrick Henry throws people into the stands. I mean, it's hilarious to watch what happens when a big, strong man is running the football with mean intentions. I love it as well. But we've been, and I wonder if every generation does this, probably so to some extent. I mean, my dad would have done it with Bill Russell and others in basketball. When you see a guy win more rings than you could put on your hand, then you're going to talk about it. But I got to see his college and then pro career. I'm talking about Michael Jordan. I got to see, and so did you, in totality, Tiger Woods. I mean, it's not lost on me. Well, I want to add another to the mix, and he's one of many that goes down as an all-time great player. I got to see Magic. I got to see Bird and Kareem. We can keep going, right? But most of you, even if you're considerably younger than me, have been able to watch LeBron James. LeBron James scored 46 points last night. You're going to say, okay, it's a midweek NBA game, Jeff. 46 points against the Clippers, making him the only player in history to score 40 or more points against every team in the league. LeBron James is old as hell, and he is still a top 10 player in the league.
Yeah.
He's going to surpass some of the greatest records of all time. Pat Riley recently gave an interview about this, talking about what Kareem accomplished in points and all of these things. We've had these conversations, like, as he's checking them off, as we're watching LeBron check off these records, I think it's worthy to note some of these things that have never been done before. It's not just that, he surpassed this guy. No, he's doing something in some cases, like last night, that nobody, not Michael Jordan, not Magic Johnson, not Wilt Chamberlain, not Bill Russell, not Larry Bird, not Dominique Wilkins, or anybody else has ever done. And I get it. People are polarized by LeBron James. They'll say, well, I love him or hate him or whatever it might be. But note this. LeBron James was a high school prodigy. On the front cover of Sports Illustrated, when he's 17 years old, ESPN was filming his high school games. You could not have greater expectations hoisted upon a player more than LeBron James. And he's never been in trouble. You've never heard a sour word about LeBron James when it comes to the law or anything like that, despite, by his own admission, not having a dad in the household in which he was raised in poverty and having those expectations and later money and all of the trappings of fame. And all he's done is always be in shape, always be prepared, always whoop ass, and now he's breaking records. We should appreciate that. We should appreciate the hell out of that. That is amazing. And he said another one last night. Hour number 2, forthcoming. Stay with Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV.
If you're like most Americans, you can see things are out of control. Global problems have local consequences, too many of them. And if the next news headline spins us into chaos, you'd better be ready. Grocery store supply chains are only as strong as their weakest link. Don't wait for them to break. Today's the day to secure emergency food for everyone in your family. My Patriot Supply is America's largest preparedness company. Our specially packaged and delicious food stays fresh for up to 25 years in storage. It'll be there when you need it. Go to mypatriotsupply.com and pick up several emergency food kits. There are a dozen different sizes that average over 2,000 calories per day. As we all know, calories equals energy equals survival. And as you'd expect from a true preparedness company, our food kits are in stock and ship quickly. Those who know what's coming are preparing today. Go to mypatriotsupply.com. mypatriotsupply.com.
Hey everybody, the perfect fireplace makes your house a home. How's your fireplace looking? Not too well? Hearth and Patio can help you with that. Actually, Hearth and Patio can help you with anything fire. Give my friends a call at Hearth and Patio. If you need new fireplace upgrade, fireplace repair, you need custom outdoor kitchen, grills, or an amazing fireplace for your backyard. 850-727-4282. That's 850-727-4282. Or you can visit them online at hearthpatiotallahassee.com. Hearth Patio Tallahassee. They keep the home fires burning.
If it's happening in the capital city, you'll hear it first on Real Talk 93.3 WVFP, Gretna, Tallahassee.
Give your business a facelift with a modern, consistent, creative brand overhaul from Curiosity Marketing Group. These days, it's not enough for your business just to have a standard website or a Google listing to reach your customers. Your business needs to stand out with eye-popping branding, modern web development, and strong marketing. And it takes a team to pull it all together. Words and websites matter. At Curiosity, we make the most of yours. Find out more at curiositymg.com.
I used to fight almost on a daily basis working on my business website. I'm a pretty smart guy, but I could never get it to function the way I needed it to, and I was losing customers because of it. That's when I called Curiosity Marketing. They listened, they understood, we collaborated, and in the end, they delivered beyond my highest expectations. Now, I can barely keep up with the work. They say the future belongs to the curious, and now I'm excited about the future of my business.
Find out more at curiositymg.com.
There's fun to be had every night at the Corner Pocket. Take home prizes on Trivia Tuesdays and Beer Bingo Thursdays. And kickstart your weekend with Martini Fridays. Plus happy hour runs every weekday and game day specials every time the Noles take the field. Watch all the best games at the Corner Pocket's Vegas Wall, featuring 560 inches of flat screen TV heaven.
Oh, really?
The best food, the best drinks, and the best place to watch all the games. Tallahassee loves the Corner Pocket.
My man Eddie.
Jeff, what's happening, dude?
Bears eating people all over the place. I read another article today. It's the third one in the last month of somebody getting mauled to death by a bear.
Man, bears have their own space. Well, you got to let them have that.
You do. You got to stay clear of bears is what you're saying?
Yes.
I got a question for you. Here you go. If you had to be mauled to death, eaten alive by any animal in the world, which would you choose to eat you alive?
Ooh, I think maybe I'd want, longevity time, a mouse.
Just a slow burn.
Slow burn.
This thing just finished the pinky. It's been a month.
I could go to work. I could still do my thing. I could probably live 30 years.
I thought you were going to say great white because it'd be quick, or a grizzly. We went with mouse.
Yeah, mouse.
Okay. Mouse it is.
Gordo's, bringing the flavor and flair of Cuban food to Tallahassee since 1996.
Coming up next, more of the Jeff Cameron Show. Live and local on Real Talk 93.3. WVFT, Gretna, Tallahassee.
The latest betting odds and line movements from Vegas. This is your action update. Now here are your latest lines from our guys in the desert.
The number 1 seed of the AFC, the Kansas City Chiefs, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars at Arrowhead Stadium tomorrow. Kansas City, the 9-point favorite with a total of 53. Rushing prop bet on the board for Travis Etienne, over under 71.5 rushing yards. Trevor Lawrence passing prop bet, 242.5 shaded to the over, and 1.5 touchdown tosses shaded to the over, minus 130. Patrick Mahomes passing prop bet, 310.5 passing yards, 2.5 touchdown tosses shaded to the under, minus 130. Chiefs laying 9 against the Jaguars tomorrow. Sign up now for your free VSiN subscription at vsin.com/subscribe. For more sports betting news and information, go to vsin.com. Mike Sennett, Real Talk 93.3.
You've got advanced prostate cancer, but you're not waiting around. You want straight talk, the facts about Orgovix.
Orgovix Relugolix 120 milligram prescription tablets is a treatment for adults with advanced prostate cancer. Fact, Orgovix is a different kind of androgen deprivation therapy treatment, a pill, not an injection. Orgovix may cause serious side effects, including a heart condition called QT prolongation. Tell your doctor right away if you feel dizzy, faint, have a racing or pounding heart, or chest pain. Orgovix can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during treatment and for 2 weeks after Orgovix treatment. The most common side effects include hot flushes, increased blood sugar and blood fat levels, muscle and joint pain, decreased blood hemoglobin levels, increased liver enzymes, tiredness, constipation, and diarrhea. Other side effects include weight gain, decreased sex drive, and erectile function problems. Orgovix may cause infertility. Talk to your doctor if infertility is a concern for you.
Go with Orgovix. Ask your doctor. For more facts, visit gowiththefacts.com.
Tallahassee's favorite family-owned Apple and Mac product store has moved to an all-new location. Mac & More Systems is now located at 230 John Knox Road. Same great people, same great services, same great prices, all at a new location. Mac & More offers computer and Apple device sales, one-on-one consulting, business services, and the most experienced Apple repair team in the city. Learn how to get the most out of your Apple gear. Come by and say hi to the Mac & More Systems team today at their new location, 230 John Knox Road.
Hey, this is Greg Tish. Here's something you might know about me. I don't drink coffee. I have never had a cup of coffee in my life. Well, that is until now. So why change now? Well, it's because my dear friend at Grassroots Coffee reached out to me after hearing me say that and insisted that I give his product a try. I've been making a huge mistake. The world of coffee is fascinating. I always thought coffee is coffee, you know? No, it's not. I have tried their coffee and it is fantastic. Now, I've got a fascination with learning more about the best coffee in our area. Grassroots Coffee is locally roasted, locally owned, and locally loved. You can find whole bean Grassroots Coffee on the local aisle at Publix, also in Whole Foods. But the best way to get this black gold is to order it online. They literally grind the fresh roasted beans to your preferred level, bag it, write the date on it by hand so you know the exact day your coffee was roasted. It doesn't get any more fresh than that. Order yours now. Just go to grassrootscoffee.com and choose the coffee you want and how you want it, and join me. Let's step up our coffee game together and also support a great local business.
We all want more energy, more strength, more results. Well, welcome to Orange Theory Fitness as you take a step towards feeling more alive today. Backed by science, Orange Theory's heart rate monitored workout is scientifically designed to keep heart rates in a target zone, spiking metabolism and increasing energy. Orange Theory Fitness is a one-of-a-kind group personal training workout resulting in more energy, visible toning, and extra calorie burn for up to 36 hours. Experience a more vibrant life today with Orange Theory Fitness. To find out more, go to orangetheoryfitness.com.
Broadcasting live from Florida's capital city, this is the Jeff Cameron Show, brought to you by Orange Theory Fitness on Real Talk 93.3. Now, stop what you're doing and listen closely. It's time for the Jeff Cameron Show in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Appreciate you being with us. Like last hour, this hour recorded just hours before we would normally be on the air. Couple reasons for that. None of them are all that pertinent. Obviously, last hour we documented the travesty of a beatdown that took place last night at the TLC CC. Won't get too much more into that other than run out the gym, no Platinum Bohica. At the end of the last hour, I'm going to put a ribbon on that point I was making about LeBron James. No, I know you don't want me to go on a diatribe about LeBron James. But the point is, in the world of sports, just like in entertainment in general, we tend to find ourselves looking for reasons to tear people down. Fan bases, fans in general do that, right? Because unless it's your guy, you tire very quickly of the guy that wins for the other guy, right? So unless it's a Knoll, or in my case, unless it's a Tampa Bay Buccaneer in the NFL, unless it's a Pittsburgh Pirate in baseball, which it's not going to be, guys. I guess Andrew McCutchen was the last one of those guys that I had. But you're always going to have a level of disdain that only grows more over time with the other superhero that plays for the wrong team in your mind, especially if they happen to be in your conference, especially if they happen to beat your favorite team on the regular. So over time, we hate Derek Jeter, or we hate Tom Brady, or we hate whomever it is that's had too much success for our liking. The other thing that happens is not only is there a concentrated effort to tear guys down, but you wait for the moment where they give you the opportunity. They say something stupid, they do something stupid, they overreact to something, and their actions result in what you deem to be insight into who they are, and therefore you can tear them down. And look, they're no perfect people. So there's always room to tear people down. All of us, right? Character flaws abound. We all have our piccadillies, if you will. But what I think should be noted most of the time is if these guys, regardless of who they play for, are transcendent in terms of the sport they play, they are preternaturally gifted and good, but got the most out of those gifts, meaning, yeah, it's nice genetically to be 6'8", 6'9", and play basketball as opposed to being 5'7", but you still have to work really hard, and that always seems to get overlooked. People are like, well, how lucky are they? They're just gifted. Just God's gifts is often described. And I'm always of the mindset, man, there are a lot of 6'9" guys that suck at basketball. There are a lot of 6'9" guys that were ho-hum at basketball. There are very few that harness the talent or whatever genetic gift they have to become a transcendently great athlete. And there are even fewer that do so. And really, if we're being honest, can't be all that nitpicked. I mean, the decision was stupid. LeBron obviously turned his back on Cleveland in the moment. You could argue that it's understandable, but maybe the way that he did it wasn't. You can say any number of things about quotes that he's had where you disagree with him philosophically, politically, or otherwise. That's fine. But if we're being honest, when you look at the all-time great athletes of an era, and we're living in one where we've seen LeBron, we've seen Tiger Woods, we've seen Tom Brady, and now you're watching guys like Patrick Mahomes and others assume that role, right? It's rare that we get through it without there being some serious scandal or something that I think warrants harsh criticism. And that's especially true if it's given to that person in terms of the fame and the notoriety when they're really effing young. It's one thing if you emerge as an elite player in your sport through years of hard work and toil, and at 25, 26, 27, you kind of come into your own. And all of a sudden, we watch that rise, that meteoric rise of a player, and you see, okay, he's got the right pieces around him, and he's figured it out, how to react with teammates, interact with teammates, how to deal with the superstardom that's been growing over time, how to deal with fans when you're out in public, how to deal with all of that money, all of those things, right? It's one thing for that to happen gradually, but for it to be, again, thrust upon somebody in their teenage years, well, we all know. I mean, there are countless stories in every walk of life, in particular in the entertainment industry, of child stars and what happens to them. It's, you see it pretty regularly when you're thinking about trust fund babies and the like. So the fact that LeBron has gone on to set records and live up to the hype, live up to what he was hyped to be, and then some, and continues to be great at that age where there's nothing else to accomplish, and to always be in shape and always play. We live in the era in the NBA in which guys take nights off on a daily basis. It's crazy. Some of the biggest superstars in the world just regularly taking days off for no reason. And you know, Jordan, Bird, Magic, Hakeem, all these guys are appalled by that. Look, LeBron's old. And if you look at the equivalency of games played in the postseason, he's had countless added seasons to the legs, the wear and tear on the legs. And yet he's always in shape, always ready to play, always really good. So that's all. Doff of the cap. We're lucky to be living in that era, and it's still going swimmingly. That Lakers team sucks. So for me, it's the best of both worlds because he's still good and Lakers stink. And I hate the Lakers, so that's fine. There's still plenty of people that love the Lakers, just like the Cowboys. Pretty polarizing franchise, to say the least. All right, I wanted to get to something else here because I find this fascinating. This came up, and it's come up a lot lately. You guys know, because I've brought it up, that I do some other work for On3, where I'll occasionally sit in as a driver, that is to say a host, for the local talent that is covering those teams and programs for that team site. So I do work with Nebraska. I've done some work with Tennessee and some work with other programs here and there. I wouldn't call myself an asset necessarily to those sites or anything like that. Just somebody who is a talker. That's what I am, a guy who has an opinion and can talk and steer a conversation because I've been doing it for a long time. But one of the cool things that happens when you get that opportunity to work with a Michigan or a Nebraska or anybody else, you get insight, you gain insight into what fans think, what fans are hand-wringing over or excited about or frustrated by. And when that happens, it's kind of cool. It's like revelatory for me because I'm not in Lincoln and I'm not in Ann Arbor and I'm not in Knoxville, and I don't know the things that have frustrated them and the issues that have grown out of something else. And, you know, a lot of times that kind of interaction reveals to me what's really on the mind, what's omnipresent on the mind of fans. Well, for us over the last number of years at Florida State, it has been what? Whether or not we could get out of the ACC. Can Florida State get out of the ACC? Because we know long-term staying in this conference in all likelihood is the death knell towards consistent success. You can be good. Florida State's good right now. You could be very good, maybe even national championship good here and there in the ACC. Now, I do believe if the financial structure remains the same, and the dearth, the gap between what Florida State has and what the SEC teams have, I think it gets harder to sustain excellence, gets harder to achieve greatness. I think it all stands to reason. Primarily because if openings become possible on your staff, everybody knows that coaches come and go, you don't have the money to compete for the best of the best in the coaching world. Not if simultaneously a Big Ten school wants the services of that coach. Simultaneously, a team in the SEC wants the services of that coach. You go into battle shorthanded. They're able to offer, in some cases, the further removed we get with this disparity in income annually for programs in the ACC compared to the SEC, you get, in some cases, potentially doubled. That's right. Teams are going to be able to offer the top assistants or head coaches double what you could offer them if you are stuck in the ACC for a prolonged period of time, or if the structure of how the monies are obviously dispersed at the end of every year doesn't change. That is to say, they make provisions such as, look, Florida State's a moneymaker. It's a brand. It's one of the few feathers in the cap of the ACC when it comes to football. When we're operating at peak efficiency, that is most assuredly true. That Florida State is that. Now, when you think of another brand in the ACC, there aren't many, right? Clemson is obviously one that comes to mind. So schools like that might end up, if they can't get out, but find the situation to be untenable, position themselves in a way to say, we need more money. Now, they tried this in the Big 12 and it didn't work with Texas and obviously Oklahoma. In terms of the Texas blunder, obviously they got their own channel, all those things. You guys can read all about how that played out. Most of you are really knowledgeable. Most of you are diehard, passionate fans of college football. And it's not just that you're fans of Florida State, but you love the sport as a whole. And you know what a disaster that was. That brings me to my larger point about all of this. There was an article, actually it was, I often read The Athletic amongst many other things, and I don't always love the writers there, but I certainly think that the website does a very good job of covering the sports I like for the most part. And there was a mailbag recently. Stuart Mandel, you can hate him, you can love him. That's really not pertinent to this, okay? So here's the deal. There were questions about NIL. We've had a lot of conversations about that. I read what he had to say about the Florida Collective and that situation and the NCAA and all of that other stuff. I scrolled down further to read the question about Oklahoma. And this question was from some guy named Joel in Oklahoma. And he said, in one of your answers to a previous mailbag, believe me, this circles back to Florida State, you said Oklahoma to the SEC has the potential to be like Nebraska when they moved to the Big Ten. As you might imagine, Oklahoma Sports Radio is having none of that. Certainly differences, largely that Nebraska was further into a decline than Oklahoma. But I think you were right to raise the possibility of that happening. If we start with the first college football playoff year, where would you guess the Sooners would have finished in the SEC had they been members? My guess is they would have averaged 4.5, fifth place. Okay, that's what Joel had to say in his question. Don't know Joel from Adam. I thought it was an interesting question, and in response to what Mandel had written, he went on to say, did Stewart, people took that answer in a direction he didn't intend. He did not mean to suggest that Oklahoma would become the equivalent of Scott Frost-led Nebraska once they joined the SEC. So this perked my ears because I have been working closely with Nebraska, and I also have said on the show over the years, one of my best friends has multiple degrees from Nebraska and is from the state, and he has been dismayed by the over 20-year lull of Nebraska football. And I think, and I was talking with another prominent Florida State guy the other day, and our conversation in private was, thank goodness we're having this conversation while Florida State's good. It's really nice to have a conversation with you where we both can harken back to Florida State being on the cusp of being very, very good and not lamenting the fact that they still stink. Because the more something lingers like mediocrity or outright poor play, you begin to wonder, is your program capable of falling as far and for as long a period as Nebraska did? We've seen it with Miami. To varying degrees, it's kind of interesting. You could even throw in there Florida in a weird way just because they've gone through so many coaches. I mean, we think about how many coaches, if you combine Florida and Miami over the last 20 years, how many coaches there have been, it kind of really suggests certainly Florida State had that huge down period where we transitioned from Jimbo to Willie and from Willie to Mike. It kind of illustrates just how the state of football in the state of Florida is not where it needs to be. It's not operating at peak efficiency. I'm not worried about the rest of the state. I'm worried about us. So it's nice to come out of that funk and reemerge as a program that's not only on the rise, but has a chance to be elite again. And it's good to be seen that way in the eyes of so many that cover college football, because that certainly informs the way that a lot of people take in the sport and how they view this program. Ultimately, that trickles down to high school coaches and players and the way that you can or cannot recruit successfully. So it matters to be good at a time where there's a lot going on. The landscape has shifted. The rules are changing. NIL has entered the picture. You need to be good at this time, especially if ultimately your goal is this, to leave this godforsaken conference. I go back to that. If the goal is, in fact, to eventually leave here, obviously you have to have yet another good season this year. Florida State must play well on the heels of having played well. One would think that they will. They've got talent. They've got depth, the likes of which Mike hasn't had since he's arrived. They've already done a lot with very little and improved it along the way. Players have been developed and gotten better. We're hoping to take the next step forward. And then maybe ultimately, if you do that for 2 and 3 or 4 years at a time, you're in a position to finally get out of here as that number of years left on the deal, the grant of rights deal and all of that to the ACC diminishes. Maybe you get closer to being able to work out a deal. So I bring it back to this original point because I ask you this question. I'll read the chat afterwards. It is something we can talk about tomorrow or Friday. I find it to be infinitely fascinating because I think a lot of us will have very different answers, and many of you have great insight to back up what it is your opinion is on this issue. I want to ask you this question. So, a little context. His answer, Mandel's answer, I did not mean to suggest Oklahoma will become Scott Frost level bad once it joins the SEC, but when Nebraska joined the Big Ten in 2011, it was largely viewed as the fourth blue blood joining the others, Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State being the blue bloods there. Based on its history, Nebraska would be expected to compete for championships. And in fact, very early on in year 2, they did. They reached the league title game. Nebraska would no more be considered Big Ten royalty today than Wisconsin, Michigan State, Iowa. So they lost some of their identity along the way. It's interesting, you look at it, it's like, and he goes on to point this out, it's like a Big 8 school playing in a conference with Maryland and Rutgers. If Oklahoma, though not as drastically, you go back to when the Big 8 existed, it was largely Oklahoma, Nebraska all the time, right? In the Big 12, it was Oklahoma, Texas. His suspicion is that over time in the SEC, it will be Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, Auburn, with others coming and going. Thus, like Nebraska, Oklahoma will lose some of its prestige. Okay, it's fascinating, right? He mentions that they won 14 Big 12 championships since 2000. How many would they have won? In that time, there have been 31 SEC championship games, of which Alabama has won 10, Florida 7. No one else has won more than 5. How many would Oklahoma have won in that time frame compared to the 14 Big 12 championships they won in that conference? The question that I finally arrive at is this. Do you care? If Florida State were to join the SEC, everybody knows that the road to winning championships would get that much more difficult. Everybody would recognize, and maybe to varying degrees, accept the fact that the time between winning championships or going to the college football playoff or competing for national championships as opposed to just conference championships, although I would argue certainly if you win the SEC, you're going to be in the discussion to play for a national championship. But the point would be that it would get that much more difficult, exponentially difficult, with the amount of good teams that are in that conference, the level of recruiting, the money, and all of those things. And would that bother you? Or would it just be enough? Are you at a place in your college football fandom as in the sport as opposed to singularly Florida State, are you at a place where you could say, I just don't want to be at a distinct disadvantage to where we don't even have the opportunity to compete? If you're telling me that I've got to find a way to navigate a conference by the time we get there that will have Oklahoma, Texas, Auburn, Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, right? We keep going. I mean, maybe to lesser degrees, we're not as worried about Kentucky, Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, Missouri, Arkansas. You get the picture. But Florida State is still going to have to find a way to get through those other upper crust programs that I just mentioned that have the same interests that we do, such as facilities and championships, money invested, winning program. And I think that I'm fine with it. Just to know that I'd be going to Doak Campbell Stadium and to see a schedule or on the road that any given year might feature games against LSU, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, OU, Texas. I mean, I'm just jumping around, just giving you a handful of games. Like, yeah, that wouldn't suck. I'm all right with that. And maybe, because I'm 51 years old, maybe I'd never see Florida State win another national championship. I mean, I'm not worried about our ability with equal footing, equal funding. I'm not worried about our ability to compete for national championships if all things are equal. What I'm really worried about now is that we don't have that opportunity because all things are not equal, or at least that the window is rapidly closing. So if you tell me tomorrow, if Florida State wins 10 games this year, they're going to the SEC and they're going to be welcomed with open arms and the competition gets that much greater, and hey, buckle up everybody because the ride may be bumpy, and if you have a bad year, you're going to get trounced by 6 teams. Hey, that's all right. I've been through the ups and downs and not had the opportunity to go to football-crazed towns that are equally as passionate about the game as we are and committed to winning as we are. I get that there's an ebb and flow to all of this, that Alabama currently in the run they're on, Georgia, who's now flipped the script and become the team, that these are outliers, that every now and then that might be your club, like we were ruling the roost of college football for a long period of time, us and a handful of other teams. We had a run that is rarely equaled, in some cases unequaled, by any program. And so you're willing to deal with that just so long as you're given the opportunity to compete. I could live with it. I could live with maybe some of the luster, if you will, coming off the program because the time between titles would have to be more spaced out based on the level of competition. I don't know if you guys have thought that through and that you would be okay with that as long as you have the opportunity, or whether or not you just say, oh, hey, listen, Florida State's in a better situation than the vast majority of the teams that you just spoke of. That might be true too. Send it to me. Talk about it on the message board, warchant.com. Talk about it in my email. Talk about it here. I'll read it. I am curious. I'm going to gauge this and pose this question every so often because I am kind of curious what the tenor will be. What is the overall thought process for most Florida State fans about this issue of leaving this conference and having an opportunity, equal opportunity to compete by joining either the SEC or the Big Ten? It's Jeff Cameron, Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV.
There's nothing like relaxing in a hot.
What's up, guys? Our next partner that you're going to hear from is Athletic Greens. You've heard me talk about Athletic Greens in the past. Happy to talk about them again. I take Athletic Greens every day, and I gave them a try because certainly I wanted more energy, sustained energy. I wanted to support my immune system. I don't like taking pills and vitamins per se. And I wanted something that tasted good, too. And the first time I tried it, I was very surprised. It had an appreciable effect on my energy levels. And also, over time, you'll note that it helps your skin, your hair, your nails. I don't have a lot of hair, but if I did, I bet I could feel that. I bet I could tell. It's a comprehensive health habit, and it is a powerful one at that. AG1 is great for recovery. That's Athletic Greens. And I take mine basically when I wake up every morning. I don't have to worry about it because you get all the nutrients that you want. It's the best way to ensure that you're going to get all of your vitamins. It's a carbon neutral business, by the way, if that's important to you. It is to a lot of people, and that's good to know as well. I would also note that it is a comprehensive solution to what you need from a supplement routine. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs right now with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/JCS. Helps me out, guys, if you use that. Not financially, but it lets them know that you heard this ad on my show. And I do take it, and I am vouching for them because I enjoy their product. It's athleticgreens.com/JCS. Check it out. I think you'll note the difference in your life with a simple drink each and every morning to start your day. athleticgreens.com/JCS. FSUHomeLoans.com.
Equal housing lender. NMLS number 2270146.
Hi, everybody. It's Ed Dean, Florida's #1 statewide radio talk show, now in Tallahassee afternoon drive from 5 to 6 p.m. right here on Real Talk 93.3 FM. Yes, highly entertaining, fast-paced, never boring. We always give you the story behind the story when you catch the Ed Dean radio show. And we are ready to go. Tallahassee daily, 5 to 6 p.m. It's the Ed Dean radio show on Real Talk 93.3 FM WVFT.
This is Ken Wondergem, owner of Gem Mazda of Tallahassee, serving North Florida and South Georgia for over 20 years. And I'm happy to announce that things are finally back to normal at Gem Mazda. Our lot is loaded with brand new Mazdas for the first time in 2 years. So if you've been waiting for the price and selection of new cars to return to normal, the wait is over at Gem Mazda, where we've always provided our customers with the highest quality of service and care. You know Mazda's reputation for efficient, dependable, and affordable vehicles, but you simply must experience the luxurious new lineup of 2023 Mazdas in stock now at Gem Mazda during our New Year's sales event. Get adventurous and connect with nature in a brand new 23 Mazda CX-50 with all-wheel drive. But hurry in while the value of your trade is still high. At Gem Mazda, we take our slogan seriously. No games, no gimmicks, just a gem of a deal. Gem Mazda of Tallahassee, Capitol Circle Northwest, just up from West Tennessee Street, and always open at gemmazda.com.
We all want more energy, more strength, more results. Well, welcome to Orange Theory Fitness as you take a step towards feeling more alive today. Backed by science, Orange Theory's heart rate monitored workout is scientifically designed to keep heart rates in a target zone, spiking metabolism and increasing energy. Orange Theory Fitness is a one-of-a-kind group personal training workout resulting in more energy, visible toning, and extra calorie burn for up to 36 hours. Experience a more vibrant life today with Orange Theory Fitness. To find out more, go to orangetheoryfitness.com.
Welcome back to the Jeff Cameron Show, sponsored by Legendary Home Loans, a mortgage experience designed around speed, simplicity, and customer service. Before you buy your next home, contact our friend Shannon Young with Legendary Home Loans. Visit FSUHomeLoans.com. FSUHomeLoans.com.
Good article out of PFF is the website, Pro Football Focus college version that you guys can read. It is entitled Unfinished Business. Jordan Travis and Florida State have national championship aspirations for 2023. The article is, again, it's interesting. It comes from an interview, but also Max Chadwick, who wrote it, noted that for the first time in seemingly forever, there's palpable excitement around Florida State football. First 10-win seasons 2016, all the things you guys know. First winning record in 5 years, unfortunately, all the things you guys know. And a really talented roster. PFF ranks Florida State 4th in their way too early top 25 for the 2023 college football season. A reminder, the schedule will be released on Monday. So we will know, well, we know the schedule, but the order of the games, conference schedule, times, and dates will be made available on Monday on the ACC network. And obviously they'll do an entire show around that. We will react to that. We will probably do something live that night here at warchant.com. I will certainly talk about it here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio as well as Warchant TV. And we will talk about it on Seminole Headlines the next day and on the Jeff Cameron Show on Wednesday. Wake Up Warchant will do the same. So plenty of discussion surrounding expectations, Florida State, and it's a lot of the national conversation surrounding the sport here in the brief off season that we're all in now from football. Although, again, you're right to point out there is no off season. And the article is lengthy, has plenty to say. It's an interesting article in that Travis gives insight into his mindset and what it was like to kind of be an underdog and how Florida State was always his dream school, but it got off to a rocky start with all of the things that happened. And he basically, I want to start here, though. I want to start here because I've made this point a lot. It's because I hear it a lot from folks in the NIL world and in particular where the battles end. I think it's important because it's nice to know that that's the way he's seen, and it's important. And obviously we're seeing the successes within the portal, but we talk about what an asset Mike Norvell is right now. Right coach, right time, right attitude, young, hungry, aggressive, steeped in what he believes is a principled approach, certainly, and a methodology that has been embraced by the players. And that's important because messaging is just that. It's messaging. hopefully it is rooted in something that is living and breathing and works. It is tried and true. It is something that stands the test of time, but more importantly, adversity, right? Well, that it has had to do. But when you hear players routinely reference why they're happy to be here, why they chose to come here, being Mike Norvell and his messaging and the way that he interacts with them, then you know you're in a pretty good place, that messaging has certainly washed over the players and they've taken ownership of it. Quote, I loved him from the first day that he came here. He came in, earned our respect. He never asked for it. He earned it. Coach Norvell is the best decision Florida State could have made. We put our trust in him and knew it would work out. Went on to say that he knew midway through, by the way, the LSU game this past year, that they had the potential to have a very good season and be perhaps special. Quote, we showed a lot of toughness in that game. That's true. They did. They showed that they still needed a couple of things to go their way in order to get over the hump, but they did show toughness in that game. And so from there, we get into the conversation about what's realistic and what's not. Now, I want to go down here talking about the return this year and expectations. And there's been a lot of talk. We've had plenty of talk about whether or not it's a good idea to launch a Heisman campaign, a website, and put added pressure on Jordan Travis, because he's a guy that kind of shuns the limelight, which I absolutely love about him, by the way. But again, this is another example, I think, maybe gives you a glimpse, some insight into how he's going to handle the expectations, how he's going to handle being under the gun, how he's going to handle the pressure of being talked about in that category of Heisman candidates. Think about all the people that play college football, the big-time players we all watch and love in the game. Jordan Travis' name is going to enter that conversation going into next year. Not because I think so, not because we're rooting for him, and not because we're Florida State fans, but because he's been recognized as such after this terrific season by the national media that covers the sport. So when you watch College Game Day or any of the other national shows that highlight the sport, Jordan Travis is going to be included in those conversations. He said about that this: it's a blessing to be talked about for an award of that magnitude. But again, I came here to win a national championship. I didn't come here to win the Heisman. Good. Glad to hear it. Like the way that he's talking about it. He mentions in there, and I think this is also important, and I think, again, reveals the mindset. And why do I care how Travis views this? Upcoming season, last season, his place on the team, all of that. Well, by definition, as a quarterback, you have to be a leader. You have to be a leader that adheres to who he is. You can't be fake. That gets sniffed out very quickly in a locker room. You can't try and be something you're not. At that point, you'll fail because that's not who you are. It's not what you're capable of. It's not your personality. It's not any of those things. You're not built that way to become this other person because you're you. So if you try to go outside that boundary, you can incorporate techniques and other things of that ilk, but you have to make them your own. And so every time he talks about things like this, you can tell that he's remaining true to who he is. That's good news. We'll see once the games get started, right? I don't know. Things change. But right now, the offseason has been a lot about the expectations, the season that was, what we think of him, and how much better he can get because of the evidence of how much better he already got from where he was prior to this last season. Quote, last year, we were talked about as one of the worst teams in the ACC. Now, we're one of the favorites. We didn't listen to the noise back then. Why would we do so now? Very cool. Also really nice to hear. And again, another sign that Jordan Travis is taking all of this in stride. The article, Unfinished Business, Jordan Travis and Florida State have national championship aspirations for 2023, is on PSF. It's not a promotional tool for me to say that to them. I'm just giving you my thoughts on the article and the quotes. Most importantly, I want you to be able to go read the whole thing because there's more to it and it will lend greater context, I suppose. But just, again, you think about where he's at, how far he's come, and the way that he handles the success, the way that he's handled some of the failures of the past, the way that he's handled the pressure of having to be the guy. I keep going back to spring football. I go back to the fall. I think about the additions of the players that we've added through the transfer portal, many of whom he had to instantly find a rapport with because they were receivers and running backs. So backfield mates and wide receivers. You're going to want to incorporate Micah Pittman. You're going to want to incorporate Johnny Wilson. You're going to need those guys. There are others that Deuce Spann and others that come in. You're going to need. Oh yeah, we forgot about Deuce Spann, by the way. I still think he has a chance to be a pretty good player. Anyhow, you want to do that. You want to incorporate those things, but you also gotta forge a relationship. And it just didn't take very long. It didn't take long for him to kind of put his stamp on all of that. When those guys got frustrated, you could see the way he interacted with them, the conversations they had. When he had a bad day, he'd come back the next day and almost always rectify that situation. There's a peace, there's a calmness. I think that has a lot to do with the journey and the places he's been and the things he's had to overcome. Whether it be an ugly situation up at Louisville, to his time here, which got off to a bad start, to being doubted, all of those things. So when you come out the other side of that, you're tougher, you're stronger, both mentally and physically, because obviously he had a bunch of injuries too. So I just think all of that has added up to a place of great comfort. And I watch it happen all the time in practice. So as we add these players to the roster and we talk about what they can or can't be, I just know that the guy that has to be the leader, the one that shepherds all of that in a way, besides Mike Norvell, usually your players are an extension of the coach, and especially if your coach is an offensive coach, a play caller, a former receiver himself, right? You got to have that synergy. He and Jordan Travis seem to have that, which I think also creates an ability for Jordan to relax and just play the game. Feels like he's in good hands. They're only adding weapons. To me, you would come to practice if you're comfortable with in your own skin, and he clearly is. You would come to practice on a daily basis knowing what an opportunity. Like, I get the chance to make plays now. The line in front of me is so much better. I'm not always worried about getting killed. Oh, by the way, if guys does get through, I've got unbelievable ability to make him miss. So I'm not worried about that. I can make the first guy miss, and I'm always looking downfield, and I've got playmakers that are going to get open. And now you've added these tight ends. We're going to be a broken record. We're going to be a broken record to some extent. I just think we're that kind of giddy about the future. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV continues in a moment.
The Gators are here.
Punched it with the right hand. Powered up. Throws out corner right. 3 on the way. Good. Shoots off the glass and in. Foul on the play.
This is Gator Country.
Goes for the duck. Blocked from behind by Fudge. Angle right 3. Bang! Got it. That'll do it. A W for the Gators.
This is Florida basketball on the Gators Sports Network.
Brought to you by Sellers. Get the Sellers Advantage. Capital Circle Northeast online at sellerstile.com.
My man, Eddie.
Jeff, what's happening, dude?
Bears eating people all over the place. I read another article today. It's the third one in the last month of somebody getting mauled to death by a bear.
Man, bears have their own space. You got to let them have that.
You do. You got to stay clear of bears, is what you're saying?
Yes.
I got a question for you. Here you go. If you had to be mauled to death, eaten alive by any animal in the world, which would you choose to eat you alive?
Ooh, I think maybe I'd want, I don't know, longevity time, a mouse?
Just a slow burn.
Slow burn.
This thing just finished the pinky. It's been a month.
I could go to work. I could still do my thing. I could probably live 30 years.
I thought you were going to say great white because it'd be quick, or a grizzly. We went with mouse.
Yeah, mouse.
Okay. Mouse it is. Flordo's bringing the flavor and flair of Cuban food to Tallahassee since 1996.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, Greg.
You know all the different ways that you can listen to Real Talk 93.3?
There are several.
So we've got realtalk93.com. You can go back and listen to all of our shows in the podcast section.
That's right. You can also listen on our app as well.
Search Real Talk 93.3 and look for the red microphone and download our app. Never go anywhere without us.
And, of course, you can always listen right on the radio.
Well, they are listening.
Are they?
If they're hearing this commercial, then they're listening.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that.
The Greg Tish Show, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m., only on Real Talk 93.3. Welcome back to the Jeff Cameron Show, sponsored by Legendary Home Loans, a mortgage experience designed around speed, simplicity, and customer service. Before you buy your next home, contact our friend Shannon Young with Legendary Home Loans. Visit FSUHomeLoans.com. FSUHomeLoans.com.
Final segment, Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV, and it has been fun. Be back with you tomorrow. By the way, don't forget, our friends at Pinch a Penny, Tub Talk. I don't have the sounder because I'm solo in this second hour, but don't forget Pinch a Penny, as Tub Talk is indeed sponsored by them, and they've got, over 50 hot tubs that you can go and choose from. Find one for you and your lovely wife, you and your family, you by yourself, whatever you want to do. Pinch a Penny's got you covered. They got the big-ass ones. They got the small ones and everything in between. When I say ones, I'm talking about hot tubs, of course. I've got room, Pinch a Penny. Let's go. Let's talk. Let's do this thing. Pinch a Penny. Swing on by. Check out the showroom and get you a hot tub. As far as this final, so I don't know if you noticed this. So we were talking about numbers, and we all have fun at varying coaches' expense, right? Did you see where Jimbo's lost another assistant? That is worth tracking. Whenever he assembles a staff, find out how fast or gauge how long it's going to take for that staff to scatter for the hills. Tyler Santucci is coming to work in Duke, in Durham, North Carolina at Duke for Mike Elko. Mike Elko was formerly with Jimbo Fisher as well. And as all coaches who end up working with Jimbo Fisher typically do, they leave. They leave as soon as they get an opportunity. Duke has now hired the 34-year-old Santucci as their new defensive coordinator. They did so yesterday. Santucci and Elko, both previously obviously having worked together at Texas A&M, but they did so prior to that too, in fairness, at Wake Forest. You could see why one might leave Wake Forest to take the Texas A&M job. I think it's very, very interesting that you would take the Texas A&M job, make the kind of money that Texas A&M could pay, and then decide, I kind of want to leave here. I'd kind of like to get out. So there's that. Elko got a head coaching job to go to Duke and did a fantastic job in year one already. I also did not know this, and I have to give an awful lot of credit to Duke. By the way, they're on the schedule. So we do this a lot when we look ahead and we talk about the team next year and how excited we are. I've just spent an awful lot of time doing exactly that, and we have in various forums all week long already and all of last week, and we'll continue to do this. But I'm reminded of something as I read this article. Not only it's A, that all Jimbo Fisher assistants seek to leave as quickly as they possibly can, but B, and by the way, again, Elko left for a head coaching job. I'm not putting that on Jimbo. It is the Duke head coaching job, but he took it. It's Power 5, fair enough, and has done a good job. But the defensive coordinator to be hired, it's a step up to go from linebacker coach to defensive coordinator. But, man, you'd think if you play your cards right at 34, you're going to keep moving up the ladder. You got an opportunity, get paid more. Nope, they leave. Anyhow, for whatever reason, all guys leave Jimbo Fisher's staff as soon as they possibly can. Here's the final thing that I wanted to note about this, and it brings me to my larger point about what we think next year looks like, and we all fall into this trap. Now, again, when we're talking about schedule next week, I'll be guilty of it too. And it's easy to do. It's easy to fall into the trap. And let's be honest, it's not a great league, the ACC. But there are always teams that are on the rise and those that are falling. Oftentimes, it's hard to necessarily predict. It feels like right now that we've got a pretty good handle on the fact that Clemson is beginning to wane, right? We think. Still have good players there. Unfortunately, by the way, on that note, somebody clearly got a hold of Dabo and noted that there were changes that needed to be made. And I don't think they were going to just let him have carte blanche as to what those changes were. You would think a guy who has the reputation that he does and seldom has to be sat down and spoken to and told anything because of his successes, that they would have given him that total autonomy. But I don't think that's how that happened. Just my opinion. I think they saw enough to know that this was not going to get fixed internally and that they needed to go outside the program and bring somebody else in, even if it was a familiar face. And that's what happened. Now, back to this. Okay, the point would be we think Clemson's gone on the decline. We'll see. Maybe those moves have righted the ship and they still have good players and they'll move forward from there. I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope they are clearly descending. But Duke had a great season. And this I did not know about Duke. Duke was number 31 nationally in points per game allowed last year. So defensively, they allowed 22 points a game at Duke last season. That's good for 31st nationally. They were a top 5 defense in the ACC last year. Top 5. I would not have guessed that Duke had a top 5 defense in the ACC last year, and you could accuse me of a great oversight. I know they had a good season. There were numerous times that I tuned into Duke games, and it was evident that they were better, but a top 5 defense in the league and a top 35 defense nationally. Now, again, these are kind of standard metrics, so you could probably look at some more advanced metrics that would tell you that opponents adjusted, so forth, don't necessarily bear that out. And I'm not trying to make the argument that Duke is on the cusp of being a juggernaut. But as we get excited about the schedule release next week on Monday, and we talk about it on Monday night and Tuesday morning and Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday afternoon on the Jeff Cameron Show when we do W's and L's next week. That's right. Put it on the calendar. W's and L's next week, JCS Wednesday, because it's the first chance we get. As we do that, we have to keep in mind, again, I brought it up last year. Turns out we were one of those teams, by the way. But when we look at the ACC, I'm always looking at who's a good team right now in this league. Who's a really good team that you suspect about to nosedive. Plane is crashing into the side of the mountain. There's enough evidence, either on the field, off the field, comments from players, coaches, fans alike, articles you read, whatever it might be, smoke, there's fire type stuff. Hey, they're in trouble. I know they won 9 games last year, but they're about to fall. And then who's a team that you're going to identify as, they weren't very good last year, but there were some telltale signs. Again, last year, it turned out that was us. 5-7 the year before. We came into the year with a whole lot of high hopes. Think about it, though, outside of the area. While you and me and most Florida State fans bickered about what was possible, most of the projections and the predictions that we had as Noles were at least 6 wins, right? Nobody thought we were going to go 5-7. It was a possibility. But most people thought he'll have a winning season. What we were debating was whether or not Florida State was going to win 7 games, 8 games, 9 games. Very few people said 10 games, and it was 10 games with the bowl. But regular season games, I think I said 8-4, 7-5, worst case scenario. Tom said 9-3 to his credit, and best case scenario 10-2. We'll go in next year thinking that Florida State should win 10 games. I mean, do we think the floor is okay? How about the floor is 8-4? The floor is 8-4. The ceiling is 12-0. All right, that's okay. That's fair. All right, so who else is a team that you're going to look at that you aren't thinking that much of right now, but really could it be Duke? And Duke is on the schedule. Duke has never beaten us. Just something to kind of contemplate as we get set to hear about the schedule. There are a couple of other contenders on that list. Let's hope Virginia Tech's not one of them because they're also on the list of teams that Florida State plays. All right, that's it. That's all. Don't forget, tomorrow we're back. Redemption Thursday. We'll get more into the NFL. We'll get into picks. We'll start to do all those things. But also, I should be solo tomorrow. Total show. I think Director Matthew going to be producing. It'll be not recorded, but rather live from 1 to 3. Appreciate you joining us. Don't forget to answer the question I asked earlier. Jeff Cameron Show, 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. Take care, everybody. Be well. Talk to you tomorrow. Peace.